Everybody. Please do let us know in the chat where you are joining us from. We'd love to see. It's fascinating. We get people from all over the world. Switzerland, Fabienne, welcome. Lovely. Here we go. Rachel Thompson from the UK. Here we go. Oh, yeah. Hi. Oh, welcome. I see a few people I know that come to these regularly. Lovely, lovely. Thank you so much. So, Lorimer, how are you?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Joe. Great to see you. Just having a look at all these names go down.
It's
Fantastic. A
incredible.
few names I recognise, but yeah, well, how are you?
Yeah, really good. I'm in York in the UK, and we've got a very frosty, slightly misty winter morning. How about you?
Mm.
Where are you, and what's it like with
Well, we've
you?
had really our first warm day since last summer. The weather's been unseasonably cold, but today we hit 30 degrees, and that feels about right for this time of year. And yeah, I just hope it stays now. It's good for the Ashes. The cricket's on.
Oh, right, okay, yeah, great. It's like we always imagine that you guys in Australia are just sort of basking in sunshine all the time.
It's been really weird. Like the east coast of Australia has been hot. Like they hit 40 degrees already. And where I live is normally hot, but it's just been cold. I mean, anyone would think maybe the climate is changing,
You
is what it
may.
feels like.
Yeah,
Mm.
and we had the most amazing summer in the UK. It was phenomenal. We had weeks and weeks and weeks of sunshine. All the grass died, and we didn't need to go abroad. It was so hot, people were swimming in the lakes and the
Oh,
sea. It was
wow.
incredible. You would think the weather was
Wow.
changing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much. Well, I can see we've got coming up to nearly 500 people joining us live today. We have about 3,000 people registered for this, so I'm expecting a few more to come in as well. But we're not going to hang around. We're gonna kick off because we nearly always run out of time on these sessions. So let's get going. We've got a lot to cover as well with Lorimer today, and I'm sure you're keen to hear. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world, and a very warm welcome to this special clinical discussion. My name is Joanna Taylor, and I am Director of Noi Group in Europe, and I am absolutely delighted to be joined today by Professor Lorimer Moseley. Welcome, Lorimer.
Thanks, Joe. I dressed up. You might be able to tell. I've got a t-shirt on. I
Brilliant.
apologize if anyone thinks this is a bit disrespectful. I asked Jo if it was okay if I wore a t-shirt, and she said yes. Thank
It's
you.
it's fine, absolutely. We do. It's what you're here to say that's important. Okay, so for those few people on this call who might not know Lorimer, although I suspect that's a very small number, Lorimer is one of the world's leading pain scientists, and his work has fundamentally changed how we understand and treat pain. So, Lorimer, could you tell us a little bit about where you're working currently and what you're currently working on, please?
Thanks, Joe. So I work on Ghana country in Adelaide in South Australia. I work for the next 3 weeks for the University of South Australia, and then in 3 weeks I will be employed by a new university, which is the merger of our uni and the University of Adelaide. The new university is will be called Adelaide University. So uh, nothing else changes. My work is the same. My team is the same, and I lead a team of about 35 people, all studying pain and other challenging feelings. And what are we working on at the moment? Well, some cool stuff, like very cool stuff that I get so excited about. I guess if you think about two ends of or, or two bits of the circle of the work that our research group does, uh, we try and understand some of the fundamentals or foundational issues around pain and I said other feelings. So most people on this call would probably um, think about if they ever had reason to think about me, it would be in the context of pain science. And uh, our group is delving more and more into other feelings that are distressing and that are disabling.
Mhm.
And so at that end of trying to understand those feelings, we're starting to borrow some of the stuff from the beautiful stuff from pain scientists around the world and um, stuff that was triggered inside me. I don't imagine is on the call, but the excellent and great Mick Thacker, some of the conversations I had with Mick some time ago around beautiful immune stuff that he was doing a long time ago. He's moved on
Mm.
to great stuff since then, but um, that's really coming home to roost in our team at the moment in our research group. So at one end of or one bit of the circle of research that we do is
Mick
trying to
is here.
understand some of the consistencies around fear, pain. Hey, Mick. Hey,
He's here.
great to see you on board. Fantastic. Um, yeah, we're sort of exploring this idea that I'm calling the stealth pandemic. And I saw there are some Australians on the call, and we ran a thing for Pain Revolution, which is at the other end of what our research group does, which is all outreach. It's a charity, and we train rural and regional health professionals to train their communities, and we do general public outreach. Um, so I gave this we call it a cab sav talk, and
Mm.
we call it that because there's conversations you should have with a South Australian Cabernet Sauvignon. Um, but the stealth pandemic is, I think, really exciting, and it's
Mm.
arguing stealth things flying under the radar pandemic. It's sweeping humanity of these problems that collectively get this collectively they're responsible for over 90% of the total disability burden for humanity.
Wow.
uh, and they are chronic pain, which is the lead cause, depression, anxiety, fatigue, and post-traumatic stress. And so we're doing studies trying to understand those conditions and why those distressing feelings hang around when they're no longer in their sort of adaptive, protective time window. So that probably won't come as a surprise if people think if I'm a pain scientist, I guess I'm sort of morphing a little bit into a feeling scientist, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Mm.
We're also working on, I mentioned community outreach. So we're doing a really cool study at the moment in rural South Australia and Victoria. It's called the Equip Project. And we have run now 19 co-design workshops with 7 different towns in rural and regional Australia. And with them, we are designing town-specific public messaging campaigns around chronic pain and uh, how it works based on the essential pain facts, which is a whole other bunch of research we've
Mm.
done. So the Equip project's cool. The Integrate project is another project that's led by Carolyn Berryman, and that's building statewide chronic pain services for youth. We're running some clinical trials. One of those is called Reconnect, which is looking at the fit for purpose slash resolve model for neck pain. Uh, what else are we doing? Like, I feel like we're doing a lot of stuff. We're looking at a.
Mm.
They all have groovy acronyms. So, Companion is a program where we're training non-health professionals in pain education and community sharing of that information. So the people who
Mm.
have been involved in that are Aboriginal peer workers, practice nurses, these people who are called health navigators and nurse navigators and footy coaches and retired school teachers and
Mm.
um, really trying to build capacity in areas of Australia that just you can't access healthcare. Um, and
Amazing.
although Australia is much bigger than the UK, the same you face the same problems. There are areas in the UK where you can't access a GP or a physio or a psych,
Yeah.
and so we're trying to. Yeah, we've co-designed the program, and now we're training 45 of these people across rural and remote Australia, and seeing if they can help their communities. So a bunch of stuff that we're working on. It's a long answer to that simple
Just a few
question.
projects then.
Yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. Fascinating. Thank you.
Oh,
Um,
and can I add one more? Because Sarah
you can.
Warwick's doing great work in our group, driving um, a formalized and theoretically driven approach to how do you use everyday pain experiences in young children to promote resilience and growth and protection against chronic pain later in life. She's doing that with Mel Knoll and within our team. So they're the projects so far.
Amazing.
There's probably more, but
Yeah, you've got a lot on. That's a fascinating. Thank you. Okay, so before we kick off with the main session, I'm just going to run through a few housekeeping things. If you have any questions, please ask them. Lorimer's going to be talking for about 30 minutes, and we will have a little section at the end available for questions. So if you have any, please drop them in the Q&A, and that way we can keep track of them. And I'll be monitoring that, and we'll get to as many questions as we can, but obviously we are limited for time. If you want to watch the recording of this session, you can access it on our clinical discussion YouTube channel. The link for that is in the chat. I will drop that in again. The recording will also be sent to everybody who is registered. So if you need to drop off or you want to watch again, then you will have access to it going forward. This is the first of 3 webinars with Lorimer. So watch out for the next ones. We'll be advertising those after Christmas. And for those of you who may be interested, Lorimer has an upcoming European tour in June 2026. There's an EP3 event in Manchester, as well as events in Norway and Austria. And we're going to be giving details about that at the end of the session. So if you are interested in any of that, just stay on. If you're not, then feel free to jump off. Okay, so Lorimer, let's get going. Today, we're talking about why pain science still matters, and specifically what has changed in the last 5 years. Now, Lorimer, I think it's fair to say that the first Explain Pain book in 2003, scary, was pretty revolutionary, and it has changed how thousands of clinicians have understood and explained pain to their patients. But clinicians may be thinking, why do we need to keep updating our knowledge, and haven't we figured it out by now? So why does pain science still matter in 2025?
Great question. A nice build up to that question, Joe. Does it, do we need to keep updating? I guess I'd throw that question back at you and anyone else who's asking it, and just remove the pain bit. Like, should we keep updating our knowledge as the science progresses? And I think we absolutely should. I think that as clinicians, as health professionals, we're obliged to do that. I think that's part of evidence-based medicine philosophy. And so that's the sort of easy way out of that question. But I guess if the caveat was, has much changed? Do we really need to update? And the answer to that, I guess, is a really complex one. And one of the great things about a format like this, Joe, is that it quickly and easily get sucked into thinking this is a conversation between you and me, right? Because I can't see anyone else. I occasionally see this little chat thing light up, and I'm like, oh, there's someone else on the call. And the reason I make that observation is that the journey from the original clinical trials, which were in the late 1990s, explaining, like mansplaining, a version of how pain works that I understood to be scientifically accurate. And the 3 clinical trials in the late 1990s, early 2000s that showed this sort of, they showed positive impact, right? And they themselves were born out of clinical experiences and were fed really heavily by my own lived experience of chronic pain and recovery, and as a clinician. And then I'd done 3 clinical trials, and Dave Butler and I started to chat a lot, and then Explain Pain, the book, came out of that. So many things have changed, but actually there's a whole lot of stuff to which I was really naive, and it's probably generous, I was probably ignorant, and I was probably, I mean, like, it's a bit embarrassing to feel like, yeah, I guess to publicly acknowledge that I really thought that because I thought I was a pretty good clinician and had a pretty good handle on pain neurophysiology, and I saw I did pretty well at uni, and I thought, yeah, I'll know how to educate people on this. And since then, I've spent 2 decades just getting hit in the face with the naivety and arrogance of that perspective. So,
Mm,
um, a whole lot of stuff has changed, but a whole lot of stuff is just not like we thought it was. And the
yeah,
stuff that has changed, I think, is our understanding of how pain works. And that really has progressed in that time. And if we cut the timeline down a bit to, let's say, when Dave and I wrote Explain Pain Supercharged, Dave Butler and I, that was published in 2017.
mm,
Uh, there's a whole bunch of stuff in that it's not outdated, but there's a lot more around it, and there's a lot more growth in the field. There's a much deeper understanding of, uh, I would probably say, the diversity of process and the complexity of process. So the science itself, we now really are not focusing just on neurophysiology, but there's a lot of neuroimmunology. There's a lot of the other sciences, psychological sciences, educational sciences, social sciences that are forming part of pain education curricula for patients and for health professionals, and now for the general public.
yeah,
We have learnt a lot in the last 10 years, particularly in the last 3 or 4, around what are the bits of information, the content and the understanding targets that matter the most. So we've done, we've published a dozen studies, I think, or maybe more, involving 800 people who identify themselves as having recovered from a distressing, disabling chronic pain condition, where we've been mining in various ways their intel. What are the key messages? How
mm,
did you do it? And those key messages have guided the content. And we've been working in a bunch of studies for probably 4 or 5 years, co-designing the strategy with
mm,
learners and with other interest holders. Interest holder is my version of stakeholder. So whenever I say interest holder, it means stakeholder. Um, so the content shifted. We were quite naive to a whole bunch of conceptual change in educational science principles and methods, and we've now. I would suggest that we're now part of a community of researchers and thinkers that are actually now pushing forward educational strategies for use not just in health but in conventional educational settings, and the
mm,
little the little things we can do as clinicians, and then the big strategic things we can do, how we can set up our practices, how we can set up our services and develop programs that embrace this building body of evidence that when it comes to chronic pain, good education may well be our most effective treatment.
yeah, yeah. That's really powerful. It's not static, is it?
It's so not static that I had a conversation today with the Equip team where we're grappling with limitations of an approach that we were pretty convinced about 6 months ago, but our data are suggesting we need to tweak that. That's not going to
Mm,
land. So
mm,
it's moving so quickly. I
yeah,
feel like we're on a very steep learning curve and have been for a few years.
yeah, amazing. Thank you. Okay, so let's sort of dig down a little bit. And when you look back over, say, the last 5 years, what would you say are the biggest shifts that clinicians really need to know about?
Uh, well, I'm always nervous about suggesting clinicians need to know about
Okay.
anything, only because I've just I've had so much experience now of being wrong that I'm nervous about saying anything like need, because it implies that you're right. So
Yeah,
if I could shift the question and
sure.
say, what's most exciting from my perspective that looks like it's got a chance of improving outcomes.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, man, I could take the I could. I could probably take this question a couple of ways, but if we confine it maybe to a clinical setting, um, I only see 4 patients a week, right? That's it. So that's my caveat whenever I talk about this. I'm no clinical guru, like I'm no clinical expert. What I feel like I can offer is a way of understanding the problem and a way of communicating that is enabling and empowering for people to master their challenging situation and become better at living their life. Um,
Mm,
and I think that probably encapsulates where I think the evidence is suggesting the power of health professionals can be exploited better than it has been traditionally, where
mm,
we shift our own focus more away uh, from treating and therapy. Not to say we don't do that. There's definitely a space and a place for that, but we we embrace this idea of umphing patients, of giving patients
yeah,
the will uh, to to take on an approach that's going to be maybe more challenging, but will give them like it will change their biology in a way that will make them better suited to the rest of life. And that's a hard thing to be motivated about. So if we can be better at giving people the will to learn, the
mm,
phrase we're using at the moment that I really like is to adopt a learn, do, connect approach to recovery. That we are bold as health professionals in aiming at resourcing people for recovery. That's a it's a really challenging concept within the chronic pain space and within the
mm,
depression, anxiety, fatigue, and post-traumatic stress space. The dominant mode is I'm going to tell you what I think you can do to limit the impact of this on your life. And uh, you talked about 2003. I think it wasn't anywhere near that long ago where Explain Pain was, I'm going to tell you how this system works.
yeah,
And we don't do that now. We are very crafty in, I would say, where we're doing our best to create neural networks inside people that represent the way things are in a scientifically accurate way as possible, that then empowers them and enables them to negotiate their way out of trouble, and
yeah, fascinating.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've really got anywhere near that question. Um,
No, you
what
have,
people need to know, I don't know, but what's really exciting out there, and in the observational data we've got, in the clinical trial data we've got, outcomes are getting better. In my mind, there's no doubt that outcomes are getting better.
yeah,
Um, and while the relationship with the health professional is becoming shorter, we're not needed as much over the long course. We
mm,
give people a bolus of understanding, and in that moment we impact their their neural their neuro we impact them biologically in a way that
mm.
sticks.
So what I really heard there was that a priority is empowering people to live a better
Yeah, I think
quality of
so.
life.
And enabling them. So we often
And even,
talk
yeah,
now in our group about enabling people with understanding and empowering them with skills.
yeah,
And I think the latter, I think the empowering with skills has been around for quite a long time. I think you could take that angle on CBTs for
yeah,
chronic pain and depression, anxiety, and stress. Um, and in a way, I think you
mm,
could describe that as, I want to empower you to manage this better. And what I think, what I'm excited about is what's happening when we're filling what I think is a hole before that. We're enabling you to negotiate your way out and empowering you with skills that will slowly embed this stuff within your biological
yeah,
self. I talked about the will. The other two bits of that, and this is borrowed straight out of a meta-analysis by Hattie and Donahue or someone like that in learning. Um, Being strategic about instilling the will to take this approach, a learn, do,
mm,
connect approach, the skill, how do we learn and do and connect? How do we actually do that? And the thrill, encouraging and enabling people to observe what's happening when they do that and they get mastery, or
Mm,
they do connect, or they do get better at a skill, or they do ride out a flare up with a different response to it, and
mm.
reflecting the thrill of that achievement back. So we often talk about the will, thrill, and skill of
I love that.
taking this approach.
I love that. I love the way you condense things into sometimes just simple words that just prompt
Slogans.
so much more thought. You're very good at that.
Oh, gee, thanks, Joe. I don't feel like that's a real challenge in this space. It's a real
It is.
challenge to capture it. Not maybe not so much for patients, although that's a challenge. It's a real challenge that we're facing, and we're dedicating multi-million-dollar research projects to this challenge of
Mm,
how do we encourage health professionals, medical and health professionals, to take education as a serious part of intervention. The evidence is ridiculous. The evidence is so compelling.
yeah.
Uh, but even still, we ask people, do you do education? Oh, yeah, no, we have lots of brochures at the front. Or, "Well, we don't have time. I'm not an educationist. I'm not a teacher. I'm a physio. I'm a GP. I'm a
Mm,
whatever." So we're trying to understand, how do we get those slogans and how do we get the ins, which is why I
yeah.
really like Learn, Do, Connect. I really like that because uh, it it is in its education, but it's not labelled as such.
Yeah. We're definitely getting, we are definitely getting better at that and knowing
Yeah,
what people need. They need simple things that they can remember that then prompt them, don't they? Okay,
yeah,
so
different.
I do want to move on
Yeah.
because there's always there's something I'd really like to ask you about, and it is the excuse me, the fit for purpose model. Comes up a lot in
Ah,
conversations
well,
about modern pain treatment. Could you just tell us a bit more about it, what it means for clinicians, why they should be excited?
yeah. So well, let me start by dipping my lid to Ben Wand. So Ben Wand is Professor of Physio at Notre Dame University in Perth in Australia, and he did some great work 10, almost 10 years ago, structuring some of the most exciting developments in chronic back pain treatments into some sort of coherent program.
Mm,
Uh, and what he developed looked it was great for a clinical trial, and we ran a clinical trial, and people probably heard of the Resolve trial, where we compared this treatment approach that Ben had put together, and he put together the bits were the education piece, the sensory motor retraining piece. So a lot of that was informed by graded motor imagery, tactile
mm,
discrimination training, and then the graded reactivation piece. And that was sort of the oldest and most established. And he put those three things together into the Resolve treatment, and uh, in a way that could be replicated and was good for a trial. What he developed was quite similar in many ways to what the clinical groups that I've been working with for 20 years have been implementing in a less formalized and less structured way, that we've been calling the fit for purpose approach, or in the work that I do with elite performers, we call it the fit for performance
mm,
coach, the fit for performance program, or for injured athletes, the fit to play model. It's exactly the same. Uh, in that we're just aiming at performance, or we're aiming at return to play, or we're aiming at the activities of everyday life. So the fit for purpose model conceptualize, and it Ben's work focused initially on back pain, but we're running clinical trials using adaptations of this model in neck pain, phantom limb pain, CRPS, and Jane Chalmers is working with Ben and others on pelvic
yeah,
pain, endometriosis. Uh, and clinically, we use it for everything, right? A version of it. And it thinks about three pillars of contribution to a chronic pain space. state. One is how you understand whether or not you're fit for purpose, and one of the things that I'm hoping we'll be able to do at EP3, which you might talk about later, is getting people like Mick, who's on the call, Mick Thacker, Abby Tabor, to sit down with us and talk about some of the theoretical models around predictive processing that fit in with the fit for purpose model. And I think it's a beautiful fit myself.
Mm.
And the understanding of the problem is something that I would say feeds into the brain's prediction about whether or not you are safe for the very next moment in time, whatever that moment
Oh,
is.
yeah.
And the understanding pillar is understanding that you are fit for purpose, or you're fit for the very next moment. The next pillar is optimizing the connections, the neuroimmune connections by which your brain is able to represent your body and the
Mm.
space around you. So that draws on the cortical body matrix theory stuff that we published almost 15 years ago, drawn out of CRPS phantom limb pain sort of work and has been explored in back pain. I'm I'm not. Yeah, I feel like that's the pillar of the fit for purpose model that I don't have the as good a grasp on as I do feel like I do with the other two. And the third pillar is the loading, make sure your tissues are fit for purpose. So understand that you're fit for purpose. Ensure that the mechanics and the software and hardware of representing your body and coordinating it and feeling it are as good as they can be. And
Mhm.
then ensuring that the tissues of your body can sustain the load required to do the things. So that's the fit for purpose model. And then the treatment package that aims at that just aims at each of those pillars in a coherent way. The educational part, learn in the way I'm thinking about it at the moment. Learn why you can be fit for purpose, even though you feel like you're going to break,
Mm.
and learn yeah, that's so hard. That's such a hard thing to get your head around. You feel
Yeah.
like you're going to break, and and I think good pain education validates that feeling and reassures you by giving you a model to explain why you can feel like you're going to break, but you're not,
Mm.
an understanding of.
Okay.
And then the next pillar, greater motor imagery type stuff, and the final pillar is the sweet zone for change, and we rely that a lot in the stuff that we do.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. So I have to just ask you to take that, if that's okay, to take that a little step further. So it's the thing that we always get asked by our audience, and that is, okay, that's great, but what does that actually look like in the clinic? So what would you
Yeah,
be doing differently now with that fit for purpose model that you may not have done before?
yeah. Um, I think that I would be uh, actually going harder on understanding using contemporary and I would actually argue state of the art, pointy end of the field strategies to promote understanding of tricky and challenging concepts. And on the ground, practically, that comes down to what we say, the way
Mm.
we say it, little tricks. And we've published a few of these things like this. We rely a lot on acronyms when we're teaching clinicians about this. One of the acronyms is Reclaimer. And clinicians, they might need to practice these skills themselves, but clinicians can do really simple things to promote learning.
Yeah.
Things that are as simple as repeating word for word something that you've seen land. Repeating word for word something
Okay.
that you've seen land. So you might sort of gauge that you might have a patient. You'd really like them to understand that even though their ankle's swollen to bits and they can't put any weight on it, that reflects a really big protective response.
Mm.
And you want to maybe suggest that that's a thing to behold. That's an amazing thing. And you might even phrase it like that to say, "Wow, look at the size of the protective response. I can see it's brutally painful, But and you might have seen something in their face when you said the protective response. And you think, I'm going to say that exactly the same again. Yeah, I mean, look at the size of the protective response. I mean, I can see it's brutally painful. Just look at the size of the protective response. And neurologically, like you, at the first time you do it, you feel like a nong, right? And you might even repeat it enough where the person starts to think you are a bit of a nong. But neurologically, there's really established understandings of what might happen in neural networks when you do that about
Mm,
long-term potentiation and
interesting.
I talk about making synapses ripe for change and synapses change a lot and we can make that happen. Repetition, recall, reflection, three easy things to practice for a clinician. Uh, and
Mm,
reclaimers, you've got all these other things in there. So the things that I would be doing differently now would be being way more strategic about achieving learning,
mm,
being way more um, targeted on what it is I want them to learn. We've
mm,
done a lot of research that leads really down to four ubiquitous concepts that we call the essential pain facts and then things that we can build in around that when it's appropriate and when it might help. Um, we don't do the lecture, we don't do the
yeah.
pain talk anymore, or the pain show, or the pain presentation. We're way more nuanced, and we probably, I think, what I would say is different from maybe 5 years ago, uh, is thinking on the go to create to create experiences in
Yeah.
the moment that are learning experiences. Um,
So
and there's no end,
fascinating.
there's no limit to that sort of stuff. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question,
Now you,
but again, one reason I might have not given a satisfactory answer for some is that I'm not a clinical guru. I'm not here to say this is how you got to do it.
mm.
Yeah,
And we only have such short time in,
sure.
a 45-minute webinar. Obviously, if you want to understand and get more sort of clinical examples, working in groups in the events that you've got coming up next year are the kind of perfect environments to actually practice those sort of skills. But it is absolutely fascinating, and there's just so much, isn't there? There's just so much that you can
There is.
convert what you're talking about there from the fit for purpose into actual clinical skills practices. I love what you said. Thank you so much. Absolutely fantastic. Now we're just going to come to our final question for today, and then I'm going to have a quick scan through the questions from the audience and pick a couple that we can ask. So we've talked a lot about what has changed, but what hasn't? What
Ha.
have been some constants that haven't changed in the last 5 or 10 years?
Well, I think what hasn't changed remarkably is, and this might sound nerdy, is the apparent effect size of of what I would describe as old school pain education. And that might sound a bit obtuse, but let me explain it. So there are now 40 clinical trials, randomized controlled trials of pretty much the same education intervention that I did in the late 1990s in the first clinical trials. And the interventions are very similar. They use very similar content, rely heavily on explained pain. And what has not changed is the apparent effect size of that intervention on worry, self efficacy, pain, and disability. And the effects and knowledge and understanding. And the effects are medium on knowledge understanding, a little bit less on catastrophizing self efficacy, and a little bit
Mm,
less again on pain and disability. So much so that I would say the effect on pain and disability of that kind of, I call it old school pain education, is pretty small.
mm,
And that really became obvious probably 2010, something like that. But the fact that the effect size has stayed constant with the same treatment tells us, right, the treatments, that's the treatment effect, right? 40 clinical trials. We've got 90 clinical trials that use pain education or a version of reconceptualizing the problem, but basically pain education, as the kernel or the grounding of an intervention that also has reactivation or something like that. So the
Mm.
Resolve trial based on the fit for purpose model is one of those clinical trials. So is the pain reconceptualization, the pain reprocessing therapy. That's, the first component of that is heavily explained pain based, and then goes into other stuff. So there's one trial on pain reprocessing therapy. There's 4 or 5 on CFT. There's 90 on some version of explained pain or pain education plus other stuff. 45 or 40 of which are just explained pain as a standalone intervention.
Mm.
And the effects get better if we add stuff around it. But so far, because it's only 5 years old, the clinical trials that are doing what I would describe as modern pain education, possibly good pain education rather than bad, we don't have those clinical trials emerging yet, but we have
Mm.
a lot of audit data and we have a lot of tests of what's the likelihood of getting the pain, the concepts across with this new approach. And we're moving from hit rates of 40% to 75%.
Wow.
So and using tech really well, using really targeted tech, targeted content. So what hasn't changed is that, well, actually, you could summarize this for back pain with a network meta-analysis published in one of the BMJ journals out of the Sydney group that looked at all the different treatments for chronic back pain and concluded long-term pain education programs offer the most sustainable benefits
Mm.
with or without sort of physio reactivation. So what hasn't changed is that pain education remains possibly our most effective intervention.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed. What has changed is that we're making pain education heaps better. And hopefully in 10 years, we'll have another 20 or 30 clinical trials published that are showing, truly transformative, exciting data. And
Yeah.
the projects we're doing with agencies here, like workers' comp groups or um, some health services, some departments of defence, some primary health regions, with these new models of education are sufficiently exciting for them that they're investing.
Mm.
Insurers are investing millions in redoing their clinical pathways. So, in a way, the real world's ahead of the clinical trials in that sense, because clinical trials are expensive and time consuming.
Mm. That's reassuring, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it is
Yeah,
actually.
really reassuring. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Laura. Okay, we're going to just take a couple of questions now because we've had some fantastic questions in, and I am sorry that we're not going to get to them all. But what I will do is I will take all of these questions and we will use them to inform what we're going to cover in the next two webinars. So some common themes, and we will cover those going forward. So I'm going to take a couple. This was actually from an anonymous attendee, but it's always a popular one. Are you seeing any emerging trends or promising research on the relationship between chronic pain and the microbiome?
I'm not immediately involved in that
Okay.
research, but there's a very strong theoretical pathway
Mm.
because of the clear link between molecules associated with threat event description. So we might have the wrong balance of stuff in your guts, and that has a preferential impact on protective neuroimmune networks. So there's a clear theoretical pathway. The time the time course of that makes it a little bit tricky to investigate. I do know a couple of groups that are uh, investigating that in clinical trials, and I would say there's a signal there, so there's something in it. The groups that are doing it in animal models are getting more exciting results, but that's the way in all of, certainly in my experience, in the biggest effects are in the animal models, and as the organism gets more complex and more socialized and culturalized and complicated and has more years
Mm.
to live and learn stuff, the effects of each each intervention sort of tend to get a bit smaller across the species when you go between species. But um, I think it's relevant. So I drew a picture that's in, I think it's in the Resolve Back Pain Handbook, um, that was only including factors that had empirical evidence to support they modify pain in humans. And in there is gut and microbiome.
Mm. Thank you. Lovely. Thanks, Lorimer. Great question. And I'm just going to take one more now, and it is about what do you see as the role of AI in the future evolution of pain treatment?
Wow. Um, I see, like it feels really uncertain, to be honest. I think there's obviously such incredible power, reasoning, rapid reasoning, diagnostics, categorization, classification, all that sort of stuff, um, that I think will offer great efficiencies. Um, but, and this may just reflect my age, it makes me a bit nervous as well, and uh, I think there's
Mm,
I think there's pretty good evidence. I think there's very good evidence that some of the best things that the best solutions we have for these complex problems are pretty simple, and connection is one of those things, uh, and and embracing and uh, validating the heterogeneity of humankind. Uh, I think there's a risk that we're going to homogenize the bejeebers out of everything,
mm,
and that will end up. I think the people who are most at risk are the people who are already most at risk and most vulnerable, and we have to be very careful what
mm.
we do with it. But I mean, it's pretty amazing. It really is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've been to enough award nights in the last 3 months to be satisfied that I really want to limit my use of AI in the production of content, in my
Mm,
production of content, because it's looking pretty similar. It's amazing how many of these award winners had had very similar childhood experiences and contexts and been very similarly motivated by people getting on the moon. And I think, really? Anyway,
yeah.
anyway, I don't know. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
like everyone else. It's exciting and intimidating.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of agreement with you there that you can't be human connection looking into somebody's eyes.
Well, you can't yet, but there's good data to say that AI counselors can have people feeling very listened to and very validated, and
Mm.
yeah, it's full on, isn't it?
Wow,
AI.
yeah, really. Yeah,
Yeah.
full on.
Yeah.
Okay, right. We're just going to talk a little bit now about Lorimer's 2026 European tour. And at the end, I'm going to ask Lorimer just to give us a key takeaway from what he's talked about today, which has been amazing. And there's just so much, isn't there? Okay, so this webinar is just a taste, as I'm sure everybody can see really clearly. It's just a taste of what is possible when you get to spend time diving into these subjects and just how much there is to learn. So, Lorimer, you're coming to Europe in June, I think, 2026, for
Yep.
what is going to be an amazing tour. You're coming to the UK, to Manchester. You are going to what Drammen in Norway and
Yeah.
Vienna in Austria. Is that right?
Yeah, I think Drummond is just outside of Oslo, I think.
Okay, just outside of
Yeah.
Oslo. So let's have a little talk about what people might expect from, first of all, the EP3. That is a 3-day event in Manchester, UK on the 5th, 6th, and 7th of June. And I believe you're going to be joined by Tash Stanton. Is that right?
Yeah, so we're going to be joined by a few people.
Oh,
We're going to be joined by Mick and Abby Tamer, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to announce some of the other people who are joining us, but Tash and I. will be a bigger part of that program than the others. Um, yeah, that's exciting. So if anyone's heard of EP3, some of the Australians on the call might have been to an EP3. We've run them a couple of times in Australia, and historically it's been David and I, and then someone else. So we've had a few different people. Um, but the EP3 thing is heavier on entertainment and more speakers and probably less work for
Mm,
participants, I would say. Um, it's cool. It's fun. It's almost like a conference like no other.
yeah.
And
Oh,
Noi, as
amazing.
you guys just do an amazing job of making it fantastic. So
Yeah,
yeah,
fantastic. So there's a broad range of people presenting and delivering material, and it's all designed by. Do you design the sort of theme of the program, Lorimer?
yeah. So Tash and I play the lead role in that,
Yeah.
with Brendan from Noi Group Australia, and um, yeah, we'll craft the program to have a bit of good stuff for everyone, but also in a way we've learned a lot from David Butler about crafting the roller coaster and
Yeah,
not just the content themes, but the mood themes and those sorts of things.
fun as well. A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now if you're not in the UK or are looking for something a bit different, Lorimer's also doing two events in Norway and in Austria, and those are 2 day events, Lorimer. That's right, isn't it? And could you just tell people a little bit about how those are different to, say, the Manchester one?
Yeah, so Dramen and outside of Oslo and Vienna will be I guess an updated version of a course that I first ran last year called Pain Science and Practice. Um, that that is just me, not a gathering of people. So beware of that. It's hard work, um, and it's really focusing on getting a deep understanding of stuff that I think is important and how to operationalize that within a clinical setting or within a policy setting or program
Mm,
development setting. It's the ones that we ran last year I mean, they were, Joe, they were extraordinarily well received, and
mm,
um, they, yeah, I feel like I work very hard to practice what I preach in those 2 day courses by demonstrating and utilizing the skills that all of us as clinicians can develop to make a more powerful impact on learning in our patients. And when I say learning, I want to make it really clear that we're talking about not just understanding, but motor skills, behavioral reactivation,
mm.
uh, coping skills in the moment, uh, reframing, all sorts of stuff. And yeah, so it's not for the light-hearted, but yeah, as you know, the feedback we ran it in Vienna, I think 2 years ago, was it, um, or last year, and a couple in
Mm.
North America. Extraordinarily positive
Yeah,
feedback.
incredible. Yeah,
Um,
we get amazing feedback from the EP3s and
yeah,
also
exactly.
from those two
Yep.
day courses as well. So really, I think it's down to geography. If you're in the UK and that is an easier place for you to get to, that will be an amazing event, and you will
I think it
absolutely
comes
love
down
it.
to Europe. If you live
Yeah.
in Europe, come to all three.
Yeah. They're just so much fun, and people. I think one of the ones you did last year, people were actually crying because it was over.
That's right. Oh, yeah,
That was unbelievable. And
yeah.
okay, thank you, Laura. Thank you so much. So, I'd just like to ask you. Finally, we're coming to the end of our time together today. I know everybody's really enjoyed it. We've had some lovely comments in the chat, so thank you. If there's one key message you would like people to take away from today, what would that be?
From today.
Yeah.
Probably. something a bit corny, like I'd this is so cool. The human is so cool, and learning about how the human works or might work, and how we can exploit that to do better in our work, just to do better for our own health and for the health of our patients. It should be fun. I reckon it should be fun. It should be exhilarating, and uh, the will, skill, and thrill of our own
Yeah.
development. Very cool.
Amazing. Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. And I can see that everybody in the audience is so appreciative of what you've shared with us today. So just remember, folks, this is the first of a series of 3 webinars that I'm going to be doing with Lorimer over the next few months. So keep your eyes open for the next one. That one will probably be in February. And we'll give you plenty of time to get registered for that. The recording of today's session, don't forget, is in our clinical discussion YouTube channel. We will also email everybody a link to access that. Thank you, Lorimer, today for your time.
Thank you, Joe. It's great to see you again.
It's been
Great to
so
see some of
lovely
the
to see
familiar
you,
names
and
there.
totally fascinating, everything that you've said. And thank you, everybody, for joining us live, for your brilliant questions, and for being part of this a global community of clinicians who are passionate about pain science and helping people with pain. So take care, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. And we hope to see you next time. Take care.
See ya.
Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks for
Bye.
having me. Bye.